throughout your marriage.
Okay.
Whether you, obviously there's been a lot of arguments,
Mm-hmm.
and you're saying they're generally not resolved. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, pretty much.
You disagree about things.
And then we kind of,
then...
because time frames get in the way, we sort of, someone storms off or that happens, or... I mean, sometimes it's about something specific, something little, but it always ends up going back to the same old.
I see.
And that sort of stuff's never resolved, I don't think.
All right.
Which is why we're not living together anymore.
Mm-hmm. All right. And, I mean, are there any other ways in which, you felt... So it sounds like you felt intimidated a bit throughout the marriage with this and these arguments and his criticism of you and that sort of thing. Does take any other form, any other things that he did that upset you or made you feel hurt or intimidated or anything like that? Or
he doesn't value because I obviously don't work, and he just seems to think that I sloth around all day. He doesn't
see that hard yards you're putting in with Jamie.
Yeah, so it's always about me working, I'm earning the money, blah 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 blah. And it's, like we're both working here.
Okay, I see.
So that's something we've never been able to kind of agree on.
Look, it's not. This is a difficult process. Sometimes you both in the room together trying to when you disagree about things, and I'm really interested. I mean, how is it going to be for the two of you in the room? If there's a mediator here, you're discussing issues and trying to make decisions together. How is that going to be for you? Are you going to feel able to? You're going to feel safe with someone in the room, number one, and you're going to feel able to say what you need to say, what's important for you. If there's a mediator here.
Well, what happens if he starts saying stuff that is not true at all and making me out to be like an incompetent parent or something? I mean, how do you guys stop that from happening?
Well, look, our role is to maintain, first of all, a respectful process, making sure you're speaking one at a time. You each have a chance to say what's important for you, how you see it, because people have very different views on these things, as you can imagine. We're not here, though, to determine the truth of something.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. Mediators are not finders of fact. We're not here to say this is what happened. We have one person's story and we have another person's story, and sometimes they're very different. But what we are here to do is to try to help the two of you, even if you've got different views or different stories, still resolve the issues that need to be resolved. Come to make some decisions together.
Yeah.
So I've heard decision making's been hard in the past. You've had arguments, and I guess the hope is you come to a place like this and with some help that you manage to do it. That would be the hope.
So I suppose if someone else is kind of letting me talk, and he can't just yell over me,
that's right.
It could work.
That's right. Now, there's no guarantees, of course, and I mean, we know things can get sometimes quite volatile in the session, and we have to actually intervene.
So what would happen then? You just say...
Yep, we'd intervene and we'd say, look, we interrupt, first of all, stop the person from, and then we'd either say something or we'd bring the mediation back to the focus of what we were talking about. Often it's gone off.
Yeah.
You've actually gone on to another subject, you've gone off the focus, so we bring it back and might bring it back to Jamie and Jamie's needs. But if worst came to worst, what we'd have to do is we'd have to break up and see you separately.
Okay.
All right. So, we've got flexibility with the process. It's not that you come in here and you sit in here for 2 hours together, come what may. We can tailor the process a bit so that it suits you. That because you both have to be comfortable enough to actually participate in it. And if you're not comfortable, or indeed if he's not, we have to do something about that. So quite often we'll break up and see people separately, and then come back together, or break up again, depending on how it goes. If it is constructive, if it's working, we'd rather have the two of you together, because it's the most efficient way to work. You do get a chance to talk to each other directly, rather than if you're in separate rooms and we're passing messages. So that's the better way if we can do it that way. But we monitor that carefully as we go through each time we go through. All right. So each session we have, and just see how we're going with it. We just play that by ear a bit, and it's very important that you let us know how you're feeling about it all. All right. So what I'd like you to do, if we did get together, if you're feeling uncomfortable, you just need to say, could I spend some separate time with you, please, to me as a mediator, all right? And we'll have some separate time.
Okay.
So you're never stuck in the room.
Yeah.
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 Does that sound all right?
I just want to work it out for Jamie as soon as possible. So
Sure.
if this is going to be the best avenue to do that, then you've got to give it a go.
Well, it's when you say it's the best, or it could be the best. I mean, it's
Well, I can't afford to go to court, is I guess what
yeah.
I'm saying.
It's not the only way. Yeah, court is the end of the line, and most people want to avoid that, like you do, for all sorts of reasons. Not the least of which is cost. And the certainly the government wants to encourage people these days, and you know the general view is it's obviously better for parents to try to work something out if they can.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of people want to try this, see if they can resolve it here. If they can't, then obviously there's another process. But
Sure.
All right. Just wondering if we do hold a session, we'll talk about that a bit more, whether or not we do, and ultimately I've got to make a decision about that, having seen both of you, whether I think it will be appropriate and helpful. But would you, for example, want to arrive at a different time from Gordon, and leave at a different time? Is that an issue for you, whether you're arriving at the same time and leaving or not? Or
It would probably be easier if we just only see each other in this room, rather than I think I would feel comfortable with that.
All right. What we'd normally do is you'd arrive perhaps a little bit earlier, and we can put you in a different, so you're not sitting in the waiting room together.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And then he arrives, and then we'll bring you into the room together if we go ahead.
Yeah.
And see how it goes. And then you could leave it earlier at the end.
Okay.
Yeah. Does that sound all right?
Yeah, I think that'd be good.
Are there other issues you would want to discuss in mediation? You've talked about a number of things around Jamie and your concerns about safety and drinking and Gordon's drinking, but are there other things you want to talk about in the mediation process itself?
Well,
Yeah.
What I would like to bring up is that I really want to do whatever we can to have Jamie and I stay in the family home.
Okay.
I don't want to end up living God knows where, away from everything, we've created.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's I think my biggest concern.
All right.
Yeah.
And I guess you're not sure whether that'll be possible or at this stage. Is that right?
I mean, we haven't really gone into the finances.
You haven't had any discussions with... No,
obviously it's been very temporary so far.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, look, what we do in mediation is we create the agenda, all right, what we call an agenda, but what you talk about is up to the two of you, up to you and Gordon. So at the start of each session, you two decide what it is you talk about.
Yep.
So you bring up the things you want to discuss, and Gordon brings up what he wants to talk about. And of course, some of those will be mutual, like Jamie.
Yeah.
Others there might be something you want to bring up that he doesn't bring up, or whatever. That's okay. As long as you both agree to talk about these items, we put them on the board, and we work through that in whatever order you both choose. So
Okay.
we work through the list. Now, we don't do it all. We're not going to do it all in one session. The sessions are normally 2 hours, about 2 hours each, and the average number of sessions is usually about 3 to 4, but it varies a lot, and there's no right or wrong about that. Some people are here for 1 or 2, others are here for 5 or 6, but the average would be around about 3 or 4. A lot depends on really the number of issues and how easy or difficult it is to work through that.
Okay.
Yeah. So what you talk about is up to the two of you, and our role is to really manage the way that's done, the way that you talk about it.
Cool.
Does that sound all right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. All right. Well, look, the other thing that we sometimes do, Jackie, is we sometimes arrange to have what we call co-mediation, where we have a male-female balance in the room.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So there are two mediators.
Yep.
Same fee, but two mediators, and it's just we find that helpful in these sorts of cases.
Sure.
Yeah, and sometimes people feel more comfortable also to have that sort of gender balance.
Yeah, that sounds good actually.
Yeah.
Mm.
You'd like that?
Yeah, I
If we
think
can
it would
arrange
be
that?
good to have another woman in the room.
Okay. Okay. Well, we'll arrange that
Okay.
for you, and sometimes we have different backgrounds slightly. My background's, for example, a legal background.
Yeah.
The person I'm thinking of has a social science background, more with
Okay.
children.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
So she's often able to talk a bit more around kids' needs and things like that.
Sure.
Yeah. All right. Do you have any questions of me at this stage about the process itself? You know, what you'd be coming to do, what we'd be, how it would work, anything, or any other major concerns that you haven't already raised that you want to talk about that I should know about?
I think I've can't even remember half of what I've said, but I think I've kind of covered the things that are really important.
Okay.
I think that's about it.
All right then. Well, look, what we'd do is, I suppose my thinking at the moment, having seen both of you, at the moment I'm thinking that it might be okay to try a joint session, if you're both willing to do that. Give it a go. Monitor it closely, see how it goes, and just play it by ear from there. I'm willing to try. So although there's been this incident and there is the intervention order, as long as you feel you can put forward your ideas and participate in the process, then I'd be willing to go ahead. Do you feel comfortable enough to do that? I suppose that's my question. Whether you can put forward your ideas. So you've talked about, for example, the time with. I'll give you an example. The time with Jamie. Right? I asked you about that.
Yep.
And you need to be able to say, you know, what your proposal is and why you feel that would be in Jamie's best interest at the moment.
Okay.
You know? I mean, it's obviously important to be open to other ideas for both of you. We're trying to create an option that you can both agree with here. But I need to know that you feel able to speak up in the room.
Yeah, I think that I will be able to.
You think you will?
Yep.
All right. Well, let me know if that's a problem for you, won't you, by asking for separate time.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Well, look, what I plan to do is to therefore ring Gordon, let him know, you know, obviously I've spoken to you, seen you, and I feel that it would be, you know, be okay to get together and arrange a time.
Cool.
Yeah? Okay, well, look, we'll leave it there unless you've got any other questions.
No, I think that's about it.
Okay, good. Well, it's nice to meet you.
You too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank
We'll
you.
see you again soon.
Bye.
Summary of individual intake sessions. Assessed suitability for mediation, safety, willingness and capacity. Assessed which model of mediation should be used. For example, sole or co-mediation, joint or shuttle mediation. Clarification of concerns and issues of each client.
I've had the opportunity now to speak to and meet both Gordon and Jackie. Saw Gordon first, then Jackie. Spent about an hour with each of them. And I've made a decision at the end after seeing Jackie, to go ahead. I do have some concerns about the mediation, and I think it's going to be difficult for them. But by the same token, I think that they both want to try, and I think that it will be one of those situations where we give it a go, we manage it as best we can, and see actually what happens. They both presented in quite nervous, I suppose, obviously, first time here. Gordon very concerned just to get time with Jamie. That's his main concern. and he's thinking something like 3 or 4 days a week, 3 or 4 nights a week, I think, would be appropriate. But really, I don't know that he's really given that a lot of thought. And as to how that would actually work with his work as a chef, and that we'll need to tease that out in co-mediation. He did talk about the intervention order and the incident that led to that, and appeared to as we might say, minimise the impact of that on Jackie. He thinks that it wasn't such a big deal, and thinks that Jackie overreacted by going and getting an intervention order against him. So from his point of view, it's a bit of a trumped up thing. Very different speaking to Jackie, of course, and I'll come to her in a moment. But so he perhaps doesn't really appreciate the impact on her, I don't think, and may find that it difficult to acknowledge that in a joint session. Gordon did acknowledge that he does drink a bit, but again, he thought that Jackie was overplaying that. He describes himself as having a few beers after work, like a lot of people do, but did indicate that incident occurred after he'd been drinking, and that it was very unlikely to happen again. So now, of course, until I saw Jackie, you're really left with this knowledge, and you can't form a view until you've seen Jackie and the impact on her of it all. But that's where he was at. Now, for Jackie, she certainly presented very nervously. She wondered why she was there in a way. Of course, Gordon had made the first contact, so it was just helping her understand that situation. She would like to sort something out with Gordon about time with Jamie. She acknowledges that Jamie, as I think she said, adores her father, but she's got a couple of very serious concerns. One is Gordon's drinking that I've referred to, particularly drink driving. There's a real concern about that, and the fact that Gordon minimises that. But again, he's not really telling the truth, I suppose, or willing to be truthful about how much he does drink. So she's really looking for some undertaking that he won't drink when he's around Jamie or around her. She's also looking at this stage, just for Jamie to have contact for, say, days, half days or days. She's not looking at overnight time at the moment. So there's some distance apart in their expectations of how this will unfold. She did seem willing to be prepared to look at that down the track if things went well. So, but she saw that as taking some time, I think, and she'd need to, I guess, a bit of time to gain some trust in Gordon and to see that in fact he's not drinking when he's around Jamie or her. The other issue she raised was her relationship with Gordon's parents, which is not good. She doesn't get on with them, and she's concerned about Jamie spending extended time with his parents, with Gordon's parents, either overnight or during the day. So that's another real concern. So again, that will be something that Gordon finds difficult, I think, to hear. Gordon did indicate, although he's living at home, that he's looking to move out into his own accommodation, but it's not ideal for him. It's a question, I suppose, of how long that it will take Gordon to find his own accommodation. That in turn depends a bit on the financial side and how quickly they can resolve their property, and so there, to some extent, some of these things are linked. But that's sometimes the way it is in these early stages of the separation. After all, it's only been about 3 months, which is still a fairly early stage. Jackie talked about the intervention order and the incident that led to that, which involved her being pinned to the wall, and Gordon was threatening that she wouldn't see Jamie again. So a very serious incident. She's clearly greatly affected by it. She doesn't think, though, she's pretty clear she doesn't think that he would harm Jamie, or I imagine take him away from her, although I don't think he used those words, but her concern was more about the alcohol, and when Gordon has been drinking, that it's volatile and it's unpredictable. So that's her major concern. She did also talk about verbal abuse, that had a lot of arguments which didn't end well. Things were not resolved. There was a lot of yelling, and that Jamie has witnessed this. That'll be certainly something that we'll have to try to help them avoid in the future. The thought that Jamie would be exposed to further conflict. Something I'm sure they both want to avoid, but it'll be one of our tasks, I guess, to try and help them manage that and minimise the risk of that happening. However, she nevertheless seemed keen to at least try. She did seem able to talk about her proposals, her ideas. She said she was at least comfortable to do that in a session with Gordon, despite this incident. So, although there are some reservations, we did emphasise she could ask for separate time, for separate session, and she did seem willing to at least give it a try. So although I think there's some uncertainty about how this will play out, it's one of those cases where the clients are willing, and they may make progress. They may indeed make good progress, but they may not. So it needs to be carefully monitored. We're going to have to carefully assess it each session, and indeed within the session, and we may well have to break up and call for some separate time to really check in with each of them and see how they're going. I raised with each of them the idea of co-mediation, and Jackie especially was keen to do that, as one might imagine, speaking to a male mediator. So it's a case that I think really lends itself to co-mediation for a number of reasons. First of all, it's a high conflict case, and in cases of high conflict we will, if we can, and circumstances permit, arrange for co-mediation. Secondly, the clients are often comfortable with that gender balance in the room, and that's an important reason. And we also know from research that in cases where there's been violence, clients often prefer co-mediation. The other reason, of course, is if things become difficult, they become volatile, very conflictual, to have two people there, possibly two different approaches, as I'm intending to bring Anne in here, my colleague Anne Farnell in. Anne's background is a social science one, and my background's legal, so to have two different backgrounds in the room can be really helpful. If one approach isn't working, quite often the other mediator can try a different approach. So that's a really useful part of co-mediation as well. So it's good that they've both agreed to do that, and as I said, I think it's a case that really lends itself to that.
Ed, what were your thoughts about Jackie's capacity, do you think?
Yeah, well, look, I guess there certainly was a question mark for me about that in view of that incident, and there's also been quite a lot of yelling and verbal abuse throughout the time. I think a bit each way, but certainly Jackie feels that she's been abused verbally. Look, she's assured me that she's able to put forward her views, right, and her thoughts and ideas in the mediation process if there's a mediator there. She is worried. He's pretty volatile, but it's mainly under the influence of alcohol when he's like that. So look, we'll just have to watch it, monitor that. I think she's okay to start.
Good.
And she's going to arrive, of course, earlier and leave separately. So, but I think if we're there, as long as someone's in the room all the time with them, if we go out and get a cup of tea, as long as one of us remains in the room with them, that's the main thing with her. I think she'll be okay.
Right.
So, on the other hand, it's one of those cases, isn't it? We could have said no, we won't mediate, but where do they go? Neither of them wants to go to the court.
This might be an opportunity for them to close the gap a little bit.
Exactly.
Start at least.
Haven't had a chance to talk for 3 weeks. From that point of view, I mean, this process, is probably a good one for them, or really their only option at the moment.
We'll just have to watch the pace, and perhaps we'll build in some private sessions without them having to call for that. I was thinking of Jackie in particular.
Yeah.
We could actually, as we do with these cases, we will just normalise that process and just put it in as a standard.
Absolutely.
Part of our process.
Yeah. I have explained that to them that I would like to do co-mediation. I mentioned you. The fact that we've got different backgrounds. So what I'd just do at the start is our usual thing. I'll just introduce you and just explain your background briefly, very briefly, just so they're aware of that. And they've received that statement anyway of your qualifications already in the mail, and they've received mine. So, we'll just play it by ear, see how they go.
Good. Okay.
I think they're the main things. It'll just be. It's been, as I said, quite unknown as to how this will go. I think not seeing each other for 3 weeks. There was that very nasty incident.
Yes.
But so it's a bit, you know what I mean, a bit uncertain about where they're actually at, whether they'll be.
Have we asked if Jackie would like to come a bit sooner or arrive?
Yeah, I did. She'd feel more comfortable doing that.
To do that?
Yeah, and perhaps
Right.
leaving a little bit earlier.
All right, so we'll just keep an eye on them.
Yeah, when
they
they're
arrive.
arriving, they're not not together in the
Okay.
waiting room.
That'll be good.
All right. Well, look. Anything else you feel you need to know about, or is that pretty much it?
No, I think we'll make a start, and
Yeah.
perhaps we could divvy up the tasks.
Yep.
And
All right.
in the beginning, how would you
Yep.
like to do that?
Well, I could perhaps start it off because I've met them.
Good.
And then introduce you and just talk a bit about expectations, set out a few ground rules I think will
Right.
probably be important here, our usual ground rules, and just you know, if they're high conflict, just
Sure.
keep them, try and keep
Sure.
them contained. We can,
Sure.
and then you come in and perhaps when the focus is on Jamie, bring it back to his needs.
Yeah,
Perhaps
okay.
If you could perhaps
Try and spend some time on that.
do a bit more on
Good.
that. And then perhaps down the track in the property, if and when we get to that, I could spend a bit more time
Yeah.
on that part of it.
Good.
But, we'll do our usual thing. We'll just come in when we feel it's appropriate, and you know, I'll take a cue from your question, and you take your cue from my question, and see
Very
how we
good.
go.
Well, I might sit this side of the whiteboard while we're doing the parenting issues, while we're talking
Okay.
about Jamie.
All right.
And that would be helpful if you could jot down some of the terms and agreements. That
Sure.
would be helpful.
Sure.
Good.
Okay.
Goals of first joint session. Introduce the co-mediator to the clients and explain the mediator's roles. Clarification of the mediation process and setting of ground rules. Engage the clients in the mediation process. Carefully monitor process to ensure no intimidation occurs and both parties are able to participate. Clarify current situation. Clarify decisions to be made and where to begin. Explore concerns and interests of each client. Discuss options and reach agreements. Remain child-focused and ensure Jamie's needs are discussed. And provide a clear plan for the next session.
Jackie and Gordon, this is Anne, my colleague Anne.
Hello.
From Farnell.
Hi. Hello, Gordon.
Mentioned to you both that we're arranging co-mediation, and you've received, I think, in the mail, Anne's qualifications, basically a social science background, but it's good to have her today. And I've spoken to Anne about the time I spent with each of you and the issues that you each raised and the concerns that you raised. So we've had a chance to talk about that and discuss that. So Anne's pretty much up to date with where we are with that. We've put aside 2 hours for today's session. Is that all right with each of you? You've got that time?
Yep.
All right. Of course, we don't have to stay here in the same room for 2 hours. We can always have a break. If either you'd like a break, please let us know. We'll have a break, or we'll call for a break too, at any stage. We have just a brief introduction and a couple of things we just want to say about the process together in the room. You did receive that information statement, just checking in about that, and I don't propose to go over all that again. Do either of you have any questions about what's in that information statement, or did we cover it all pretty much in the individual session?
Yeah.
Is that all right?
That's fine.
Right, you're fairly clear about that. And for you, Gordon, is it?
Yeah, no, it's fine.
That's okay. All right, good. All right. So I don't really propose to go over it all again. I think we'd be better off to move forward and to list the things that you want to talk about today very shortly, and we'll do that shortly. Just a couple of things before we start. We say this to everyone who comes in, and there are a couple of things we find that makes this process go much more smoothly. And so one is just if you just speak one at a time as we go through, you'll always have a chance to respond to the other person, But that really makes things much easier. No, it's hard to do that at times. You might be listening to things that you don't agree with, but we just ask that you give the other person a chance to say how it is for them, and then you'll obviously have a chance to say how it is for you. So just that break. The other thing is it's really important, isn't it, that we talk respectfully to each other here. And we know this isn't easy, this process. We know that there are a lot of certain emotions, and it's not easy to come and do this, and we acknowledge that. But we just want it to be constructive, and we don't. We know sometimes people say things in the heat of the moment, but rather than get to that point, if you're feeling a bit emotional or perhaps a bit angry or whatever, let's take a break. Let's have a bit of time out. Just ask for a bit of time out, and we'll have a break, rather than say things that we in the heat of the moment. Does that sound a good idea?
Okay.
Yeah.
I think just to reiterate what Ed has said, that this is obviously the first time you've been together for some weeks, and this might be the first time you've had a chance to talk together. So we're sensitive to the fact that that could be difficult, and we'll certainly be making some opportunity for some private, individual time as part of the process. So if you're comfortable, we can get started. Okay. Could you each give me some indication what brings you here? What are the things that you need to discuss? What decisions do you need to make together?
We need to discuss care for Jamie.
Right.
I want to stay in the family home. And I don't want Jamie spending nights at Gordon's parents' place.
Right.
And I also want to discuss drinking.
Okay, so there's a number of concerns that you have, and we'll certainly have an opportunity to talk about all of those. We're going to write them up here, but can I just ask you to tell me a little bit more about some of those concerns that you raised?
We haven't obviously discussed finances yet, and so
okay.
I'm worried that I won't be able to stay in the home, and that's very important to me because I won't be able to afford to live in the same area, and that's important for Jamie, I think.
Okay, all right. So there's issues around caring for Jamie and how you're going to plan for that. And there's some concerns that you have about Jamie's time with Gordon. You've got some concerns you want to talk about there, and also about where you're each going to live and how you're going to manage two homes, I guess, and some financial considerations along with that. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. Gordon?
Well, I want to see my son, and that's basically what I want to get out of this session. If we can work out a way that I can see Jamie, then I'll be happy. I don't want to spend the session, as Jackie appears to want to, having the same arguments about, my drinking or anything like that. I just, if we can use the time to focus on sorting out Jamie, that would be great for me.
Okay.
Because I don't think we have a lot to work out apart from that.
Right, okay. So that's your main concern, and you want to keep that as a focus here today. Are you still willing, I guess, to hear some of Jackie's concerns?
In relation to?
In relation to how that's going to be worked out and how that's going to be managed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, good. So we could actually capture some of the issues here on the whiteboard, and what I'm hearing is that there are some things that you both want for Jamie, that you're both concerned about Jamie. You want contact to start. It's extremely important. So how much time Jamie will spend with each of you will need to be worked out, and the living arrangements. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Good. And also you mentioned there's some financial issues that need to be sorted out along with that, Jackie.
Yeah, mainly to do with where I'll be living.
Where you'll be living and the costs of that.
Yep.
So what you're wanting to address is issues of where Jamie's going to live and how he's going to see each of you, and that'll have impact on your own accommodation and the cost of that accommodation. So where you're each going to live now that you're apart. Is Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's some financial matters to discuss around that.
There are.
Are there any other issues?
I don't think there are any others that we need to really discuss.
No, I think there are. Involved with what time Jamie spends with each of us, I would like to put in place that all the time that Jamie spends with Gordon is an alcohol-free time.
All right, so what you're suggesting there is perhaps a decision, and that's okay to talk about those sorts of things, but for now we just want to get up here the sorts of things that you want to discuss,
Okay.
see whether Gordon's prepared to talk about that. And I think you're already saying that you're prepared to listen to some concerns about the time that Jamie spends with you. You're prepared to discuss that, is that right? So we could perhaps have that as an issue. And would that bring in some of your concerns then?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I've definitely got a point of view on that one.
Sure, okay. We're hoping that, you know, you'll be able to talk about that as well. All right. I understand that you're both, you're living with your parents, is that right, Gordon, at the moment?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're staying with your parents and you're in the family home
I
at the
am,
moment. Are there any issues that you need to discuss around the property in terms of how you're going to settle that? Is that something that you wanted to raise here today as well?
I suppose so.
It may not be something that you want to address straight away. It's up to you
That's
in
definitely
what order
something we
you
need
do.
to work
It
out,
is? Yeah. All right. Well, we could have it here on the agenda as well.
Just so we don't forget it.
Okay.
If we don't reach it today, but all right. When we've got with how we divide up our property, we're just talking about property generally. Obviously, there's a house and there's maybe some savings or whatever, and including debts. There'll be household contents. So we're just referring to property generally. But you have to make decisions, don't you, about all that stuff in order to finalise things, to work it out, as you say, Gordon. So that'll all come under that heading there. All right.
So where would you like to start on these issues? What would you like to start with first? There's a number of things there. We just need to make a start, and it's up to you where that is.
I don't know, maybe you guys should decide.
Well, we'd like you to make that decision.
Well, I'd really like to talk about Jamie.
Sure, okay. So that's your preference, is that's where we start, is about Jamie, yeah? And
Yeah, that's fine by me.
fine by you, okay. Well, there's a number of issues there. There's the time that Jamie spends with each of you, and there's where Jamie will live, and there are some concerns that you want to discuss about his time with Gordon. So
Well, there
where
can't be
would
too
you
many
like to
concerns
start?
about his time with me in the last month.
There's some things that have been expressed as a concern here, especially about having had something to drink when you've got Jamie in the car. That's something that you're really saying is very important. That shouldn't happen. And you're saying that you don't see that there's a huge problem with your drinking generally, but you're really worried that you're just being seen in a negative light, and that clearly you do care for him.
Yeah, I don't want it to be made look like I'm just pissed driving around with my son in the car, you know?
Right.
I'm not going to drink and drive with my son in the car. I'm not going to drink and drive anyway, but, I'm not a bad father.
I'm not saying that he's a bad father. I'm just saying that it worries me when he's drinking. That's all.
Okay.
So he doesn't have to get all melodramatic about being painted as a bad father. It's one specific point that I'm...
Okay. So there's some recognition that there are some other things going on other than just this drink driving. And if you can hold on to that recognition, it sounds like you've got the same ideas about safety there. Is that right?
Well, as long as Gordon doesn't drink when he's with Jamie in the car, then we can move on to looking at how we're going to share the time.
Sure.
That's fine.
Sure, it's fine by
That's
you.
fine.
But I would like for there to be some sort of review process.
Well, both of you are willing to,
Put in
you know,
place.
able to raise things with us further on down the track if you feel that they're still concerning to you.
How long a period of time before the review, Jackie, roughly? Any thoughts about that?
2 months or something.
Yeah. And just to clarify, you said you didn't want Gordon drinking and driving. I presume you meant obviously drinking before.
Drunk when he's driving.
Yes. So that would mean that that he'd actually not consume alcohol a certain period of time before he picked up Jamie and looked after him or looked after him at all.
Yep.
I'm more than happy not to drink before I pick Jamie up.
Mm-hmm.
All I want to do is be allowed to pick Jamie up.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. Right. Would you like that noted on the board,
Okay.
Gordon? Would you like something noted on the board?
Sure.
We like to make a list of the decisions that you make together. Gordon, what can I say? What's the decision that you're both making? What are you agreeing to?
I'm agreeing not to drink before picking up my son
Okay.
or having him in the car.
Or having him in the car. Is that right, Jackie? Is that the way it is? Okay. So Gordon agrees not to drink alcohol before picking Jamie up or driving with him.
Mm-hmm.
Is that okay?
If you want to continue on, perhaps we can move on now. Was it the time, the amount of time that Jamie spends with each of you? Is that what you want to look at now?
Yep. I've actually got one other thing that I'd like to talk about today. I don't know if it's
Right.
well, not necessarily today, but just certain aspects of the way Jamie is being brought up. I think we do need to discuss, particularly the sort of discipline and schooling options. I think that's fairly important.
We can add things to the
Jackie,
agenda
would you-
if Jackie is prepared to talk about that.
Be prepared to talk about those things?
Well, he's criticised me for the last 5 years, so.
It's not just me. You've been so critical of any input I have had into the way Jamie is being brought up.
So how we each
Fine.
parent Jamie, yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and also you talked about the schooling. This is primary schooling, the primary school that
Well,
he's
just
going to attend.
generally the types of, I really wanted
He wants him to go to a Catholic school.
I do want him to go to a Catholic school, and you always seemed like you were in agreement as far as Catholic schooling. All of a
Yeah,
sudden,
but also I think the public schools are very good education, and we can't afford to send him to a Catholic school right now.
Okay, so
All
is this an issue that you want to have up here? Do you want to talk about it now, or do you just want to have it on the agenda and we can come to that?
We can put it on the agenda.
Put it
I
on
don't
the
mind
agenda.
when we
Do you
talk
want
about
to talk about that as well? Good.
Okay,
All right,
we'll
then
just
we'll-
add it
it's
to
not
add
just
to
the
agenda.
schooling though.
No, it's the
It's-
parenting.
Yeah.
How we each parent, yeah? And the schooling issue is the kind of education that you want for Jamie. Is that right? Is that right?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's not. It's more
I'll just put up
all-encompassing thing about the way in which he's brought up.
Yes, yes, that includes many
We-
things,
Yeah.
including the schooling.
Yeah.
I'll just put Jamie's schooling for the moment. Is that all right?
Okay.
Sure.
All right. Well, been talking about some of your concerns there, Jackie, and I don't know whether any others you want to talk about, or will we move on to the actual time?
I'm happy to do that.
I want to talk about why he thinks I'm such a bad mother. I'd like to talk about it here because,
It's
You want
better
to talk
than
about
being
that now?
shouted
Do
at.
you want to talk about that now?
Yeah.
Gordon, do you happy to talk about that now?
Yeah, I'm happy. More than
Say-
happy.
Say something. Yeah, have a bit of a conversation around that. Okay. You'd like to understand why he thinks that.
Mhm.
Gordon, would you like to?
Well, I guess it all really comes down to discipline, or lack thereof. In the case of your views about raising a child, like, he just runs amok. Like, right before, probably a week before I moved out, my parents came over, who Jackie hates anyway, and while he was there, while they were there, I was trying to talk to my parents, and she just let him run around the house. He's screaming. There's stuff everywhere. I've been at work. I've come home. There's still stuff everywhere. She knew my parents were coming over. It just makes, it makes us look like, and you need to, if that's the way the kid is at that age, what's he going to be like when he gets to 15? You know, like, you've just got to. You've got to give him some discipline.
So how have you actually shared those parenting tasks? How have you gone about that in the past? How have you done the parenting?
Well, because Gordon
together?
works all the time, I pretty much end up looking after him all the time, which is, I understand that one of us has to work and one of us has to look after him. But I think that means that Gordon doesn't really understand what it involves, and therefore, because the sock isn't picked up or some toys aren't picked up, he thinks I'm, a terrible mother and
I just think you
neglecting
don't know.
him.
I just don't think you know how to discipline a child. I think that you have this conception that what you do all day is so hard, and then whenever I actually am home, all you're doing is sitting on the couch watching TV with Jamie. You're going,
That's not true.
how does that work out as,
I don't want to be a disciplinarian. Like, I don't want to be hitting him and yelling at him. I want him to be able to be free and run around.
I don't want. I just mean, like, in the mornings, he's running around the house screaming.
Well, it's also really hard to get him not to scream. I don't think you should stop a child expressing themselves. And B, it's really hard in the morning to get him, ready. It's not easy. He doesn't just do what you want him to do. You don't know because you don't have to do it.
You know why he doesn't do what you want him to do? It's because you've never told him that he's doing anything wrong. You let him just... If he's not doing something that...
All right. Okay, one moment, Gordon and Jackie. Look, we're getting into the detail of this, and people often come to mediation with very different ideas about how to bring up children, and different ideas about how to parent and what sort of how to discipline children, or how to, we hear this a lot as mediators. Very different ideas, very different thoughts about how you both do it. Now, you might or might not want to tackle this. This is probably, a fairly sizable topic, and whether you want to get into that right now or whether you want to come back to the other time, because I'm conscious of the time for the session and what was most urgent today. You can certainly look at this issue, and we can discuss whether you've got some agreed ideas about this sort of stuff, or whether you fundamentally disagree and you're going to have to parent in your own way. But that's probably a fairly detailed discussion, and we can have it. It's on the board. Anne, what do you think?
I agree. I think you do need to focus on the decisions you want to make. You don't want to go away not having done that. But I guess I'd also just comment that I guess I'm wondering, how do you actually talk about your differences? And that's going to happen from time to time, if not much of the time. And in preschool years, that's going to be a lot of the time. You're going to have quite an active preschooler, and I don't know what you think about how he's coped with the separation, and perhaps,
I guess we haven't really discussed it.
Okay. So does that mean that the problems don't tend to get resolved between you, and when things get really bad, it gets quite heated? Is that right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Is that right for you?
Yeah.
And you find it really difficult when things are not sort of managed a bit better with Jamie? And
yeah, well,
in the mornings?
it's not so much that it's difficult for me. I just don't think it's the way to, you know, encourage a child to grow up.
Yeah. So I hear that you've both got different ideas, but I guess what I'm asking you is, you know, is it difficult because these differences don't get talked about, they don't get resolved, so therefore, you know, there's a fair amount of heat in the discussion.
Yeah.
You know, when it gets too much, it becomes overwhelming, and you have an argument about that.
You know,
So it ends
I
up in
have
an
tried.
argument.
I have tried to talk to Jack about this,
Sure.
and like, you know, she basically said that, you know, doesn't want my parents involved at all, and, you know, I just, you know, like, won't hear anything from me regarding that sort of thing. It's all about how she's home raising the child. And
So is that another issue about, you know, your parents' involvement? That's another issue that you haven't been able to resolve. You'd like to perhaps talk about if that comes into it now.
I don't know what the issue is, but Jackie just does not want my parents anywhere near our child, and that's like, I mean, they're proud grandparents, you know.
So you're proud of that, but you're saying you don't know what Jackie's issue is, so you don't understand.
Oh no, I understand what the issue is.
Right.
The issue is that she sees them as supporting my view of how Jamie should be raised.
And you're
Okay.
supporting their view.
Okay.
Anyway.
What does that mean for you?
Well, his mum basically thinks I'm an incompetent mother because we've got very different views about bringing up children, and I don't really want Jamie to be around that sort of person, and I don't believe that she will paint me in a good light with my son, and I think that would be very detrimental to our relationship as a mother and son.
So one of the key things for you is that you're not seen in a totally negative light, and that you're perhaps supported a bit more in your role as a mum.
Yeah.
That's what you like.
Yeah. And he says that he brings up this with me a lot, but he just basically makes me feel like I can't parent at all. So it's not, you know, that's why it ends up being a huge heated discussion.
I know Jackie's used those words, but do you see that there are some positive things about Jackie's parenting, some strengths as well? There's some things that you
Jamie and
value?
her, Jamie, you know, obviously is completely in love with his mother.
Yeah.
And I mean, they have an amazing rapport. But yeah, no, fundamentally, on an actual, you know, technical level, I think we just disagree on
Okay,
how to raise a child
sure.
or what's important.
Okay, and so now at the time of separation, you know, those problems still exist, don't they? And you know, it's common for people then to focus on how are we going to do it from now on, now that we're living apart. You know, and that can be difficult for both of you because you haven't had an easy time. You've had differences. So it's expected that, you know, these are going to be the primary things that you're worried about now. I guess, you know, if you can clear some of the ground around some of the major issues, you know, there might be that there are differences that you can live with, you know, that there may be some things that you can do differently when Jamie's with you. You can do it your way, all right? There might be some ways that you can do it differently when he's with you. And you don't have to have a conversation about all those things, but you might need to about the really big things, and particularly in sort of trying to get some stability in the early days. But, you know, it's understandable that you're not the same, and perhaps that, you know, is something that we'll just have to work with. What I'm just wondering, though, is, you know, how the arguments are and whether or not, you know, that's been difficult. How do you think Jamie's coped with that?
That, I guess, was part of my motivation for, like, the vibe in the house before I left was pretty nasty. Like, from the moment I got home from work, pretty much till leaving again the next day,
Yeah.
we would just be
It was pretty
at
verbally
each other's
abusive.
throats, you know.
Okay.
And
Okay.
He's been a bit quiet.
Yeah.
He's been a bit quiet, Jamie, since the separation?
Yeah, not just since, kind of during this
Period.
period.
You've seen a fair bit of conflict in the past between you?
Yeah, I mean, he's seen us argue, but we never argued. I mean, we never yelled really at him. It's, I mean,
No,
it's
no,
only,
no, never.
It's just,
No, not at him.
he's just, no, but I mean, he's obviously been there.
It's around him.
Witness.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? The fact that he's seen you arguing, and do you think...
Terrible.
No.
Do you think he's...
No, terrible, absolutely terrible. That's, you know,
Would you want to talk about ways you can avoid that? That's something that people talk about here is how to avoid having that sort of thing happening again. Would that be something you'd want to look at, perhaps? Or
well, I think, you know, I don't really see how if we're not going to be seeing each other apart from, you know, at the times when we're seeing Jamie, then there shouldn't really be too much to argue about, you know.
Okay. So things could be a little easier. Yeah. All right, so that might be one of Jamie's needs, is that he's not around the conflict if it happens. And there might be times when you disagree and you might even get angry, and there might be, you know, even, you know, some fighting about it, but it won't be in front of him.
I suppose what we hear a lot, Anne, isn't it? We hear that people often raise things when Jamie's moving between you at what we call changeover, and people sort of sometimes see that as a time to talk about things. But of course, Jamie's under your feet and running around, and he's right there. And it's really, people generally find it's not a good time to try and discuss things. If you need to discuss changes to arrangements or things about Jamie, there's often a need to find another way of doing it. You know, whether some other way or of doing it when you need to. When you need to, I hasten to add. It's not a matter of you two being in touch all the time and having to talk to each other all the time. But there will be time...
Not while someone's got an intervention order out against you anyway.
Well, there's the question of the intervention order. You're right. I suppose I'm taking a longer term view about your need to talk about your son, talk about things to do with your son, like his education, and there'll be health related matters that come up down the track, and how you actually, you know, how you're going to actually do that when you need to. But the temptation to do it is when you're changing over, but it's often not what people say here, and we find it's often not a good time.
No, it may not be the most beneficial time. So you'll monitor that. You just keep your own, you know, eye out. If you're feeling, you know, a bit revved up or a bit, you know, upset about something, then maybe that's not the best time to talk about it.
Okay.
Yeah. It sounds like you've made a start on, you know, as you say, you know, that's your main motivation, is to try and keep the conflict down around him. So that's, you're going to avoid some of the pitfalls that a lot of kids face, you know, where there's ongoing conflict. So, you know, that's fantastic if you can do that. Certainly with children Jamie's age, and, you know, he's managing reasonably well, is that right?
Yep.
Yeah? Okay. Good. All right, we might focus then on the next agenda item, and you were talking about, you know, how much time he's going to spend with you. Is that right? Did you want to focus on that next, or...?
Sure.
When we talk about a parenting plan, I mean, there's no one formula, there's no one sort of blueprint. It's really up to every family and child. You know Jamie better than anybody, really. It can be helpful in mediation just to start thinking about Jamie and what sort of a little boy he is, and what are some of his needs, do you think, from you now? We've talked a lot about the past, but from you now as parents, what do you think are some of his main needs from this point on?
I think he needs stability.
Yeah?
So, and nothing too rushed. Whatever we decide, I think it really has to be eased in.
Okay, so that's what stability means for you.
Yeah.
Is the timing issue and getting that right for him.
Well, I seem to think that at the moment it's kind of an unstable time for him because I mean
Sure.
we've both been there for him this whole time, and suddenly I haven't been allowed to see him for a month.
Yeah.
I
So
think
for you think that sort of turned things